Hey everybody. I'm going to share with you the Rokasa story, how we got here in such a short amount of time and how did this all begin. Our story is definitely a God story. It wouldn't exist without him, and you'll see as I tell it. If you listen, you know, and if you've watched it happen, I think pretty much everyone knows this could not have happened without the Lord. And I never get tired of telling the story of Rokasa and how we began and how it has exploded and where we are now. And what our mission is behind our company and what our heart is. I think that's the coolest part of Rokasa. Like I said, it's a God story. I can't tell the story without at least mentioning him because he is the one who does this. He orchestrated this. These things don't just happen. Businesses don't just grow like this. The blessing and favor that he has given us from day one has just been nothing short of amazing. I would say around 2017, I was doing my thing. I was a speech therapist assistant. I did that for 15 years. I worked with children. I also had a tutoring company, and my heart and soul was to help kids, and I got to do that for a lot of my life and enjoyed every second of it. So I actually traveled around and would work with kids at daycares and in their homes. So that was a really neat opportunity to interact with their teachers and their parents and be able to help kids that way. So shout out to all you therapists out there. That's what I did. And I thought that I would do that until I retired or God took me home. So growing up, I didn't know much about health or home remedies or anything of that matter. We grew up going to the doctor for pretty much every little thing. It was a pill for every ill. It was antibiotic after antibiotic, you know, just like most families in America. But I can remember as a little girl watching my mom, who by the way is on her own health journey and doing fantastic. I tell her all the time, you're de-aging. She started working with a naturopath, but she's awesome. She's doing so good. Back then we didn't know any better. And I remember watching my mother put all of her medications in a pill organizer each week and each day. And I remember even as a little girl, something about that just didn't sit right. I was a pretty deep thinker. Strong-willed and deep thinker was the name of the game for me growing up, and I was hard to deal with, I am sure of it. But I can remember thinking, so what happens if my mom runs out of those pills? Does she just die? Like, it already, as a little child, made me think something's wrong here. You know what I mean? But I didn't know exactly what it was. And move forward, you know, I go to college, I start a family, and I can just remember my kids were always sick. My oldest two are about 3 years apart, and they were just always sick. I was always sick, they were always sick. It was just, I felt like we were always going to the doctor, we were always getting on antibiotic. If it wasn't one thing, it was another. And again, as a young mom, I remember thinking, there's got to be something more out there. This cannot be how life is, because it just wasn't fun. You know, it wasn't just the anxiety of watching your child be ill or you yourself trying to be a mother and be ill at the same time. It was, you know, the stress of having to take off work. I mean, at time we lived month to month, and I mean, we just did our thing, but taking off work was super stressful. Having to, you know, just watch your kid be sick was really sad. As a mom, y'all know, if you have children, what that feels like when your kid's always sick. I knew that the children I worked with were always snotty. It was always something. I worked with kids that were usually around 2 to 5 years old, and they were always sick. I remember going to the daycares thinking, this just can't be right. There's got to be a better way. For me personally, I was always getting chronic sinus infections and urinary tract infections. I had enough people in my ear that were doing some natural things that it was making me think. I knew a little bit about essential oils. I knew a little bit about everything, but I was not on the natural health path whatsoever. Dr. Peppers and Pop-Tarts were my favorite things in life, you know, and I still had so much to learn. I can remember though on Facebook, a friend of mine posting a recipe for her elderberry syrup. And I don't know what got into me, but I went to researching. I don't know if I saw some comments of people saying how much it had helped them, but I was kind of at a point where I was desperate. I was also at a point to where doctors had gotten it so wrong in my life so many times that I was beginning to question the system that be. Now, hear me out. I'm not a doctor basher. I believe there's a place for modern medicine. I believe that if I have a broken bone, I want a doctor to fix it, right? But I do not believe that our Western medicine is the answer for keeping us well. And back then, I didn't know any better. I ran to the doctor for every little thing. I can remember when my kids were young, we had guinea pigs. Of course, we had every pet you could. I mean, we had lizards, we had whatever, you name it, we had it. But this time it was guinea pigs. Well, the guinea pigs had ringworm and we didn't know about it. And so my kids were cuddling with their new guinea pigs like this, and ringworm ended up all over their face. And it was awful, and they were having to go to school like that. I mean, because you know, it took months and months to get rid of it. Part of the reason being the doctors they were telling me it wasn't ringworm, and I was like, it has to be ringworm. I know it. They had one on their thigh, now it's on their face. It didn't look like ringworm, but I had done enough research to know ringworm on the face doesn't look like ringworm. But none of the doctors seemed to know that for some weird reason. And then they would send me home with a steroid cream for ringworm with a pamphlet about ringworm. And I can remember getting home and reading my pamphlet, and it said, the worst thing you can do for ringworm is what? Give them a steroid. Put steroid cream on it, right? Because it's just gonna come back worse. It doesn't treat the fungus. What did the doctor do? Gave me a steroid cream. It was things like that over and over and over that made me start to question what I was doing. What am I doing? This isn't working. They're getting it wrong, you know. And I grew up thinking doctors were next to God, like they sat on the throne beside God. And I was wrong. This was a whole paradigm shift for me. And so, fast forward to me seeing this recipe posted about elderberry syrup. My mind was already kind of kicking in that direction. It was like, something's wrong. I have to figure this out. I was clueless. I didn't know that there was a better way, but the Lord knew, and He directed my path, and I praise Him for that. A friend posted their elderberry syrup recipe. Fun fact, I don't even cook, so this is so funny. We laugh all the time about the fact that this all started with elderberry syrup. I don't even like to cook. I don't like being in the kitchen. I don't do any of that. And so, I mean, you know, once you're married and all that, kids, you kind of have to. But it's not something I enjoy, not something that I'm like, oh, let's go make elderberry syrup. But I did. I grabbed that recipe. I held on to it for a while. Of course, my first thought was, I'm going to go to our local health food store and buy some elderberry syrup. And, I mean, I'm not going to make it myself. That would be silly. Well, I went to the health food store, looked at the elderberry syrups on the shelf, and I knew enough to know, thank the Lord, that they were not for me. They were not healthy. There was additives, there was added sugars, and I knew good and well, if I wanted to get rid of all these infections we were getting, I needed something without all the added sugar. I had enough to know I didn't want added colors, you know, artificial colors, artificial flavors. It had all that junk in it. I remember talking to the owner of the store. What are you doing with this on your shelf? Like, these aren't even healthy. So I gave up, went home, and I got on Amazon and I ordered all of my ingredients to make my very own elderberry syrup. I was a busy mom. I had a company that I ran, a tutoring company. I worked for 3 different speech therapy places, contract, and so I was very busy. And those ingredients sat on my table for months, weeks, months. I mean, it felt like a long time. And then one day, I just finally said, I'm gonna do this. And I went to my kitchen, got out the ingredients, I had the recipe, and figured it out. I, of course, post everything on Facebook. I am an avid Facebook poster. And so I was telling all of my friends and family on Facebook, I was taking pictures, and look what I'm doing. I was so proud I was making my own elderberry syrup. But the coolest part about that is we started taking it and we stopped getting sick. That one thing changed our lives. And I remember being like, wow, if this one thing can do this for our health, I wonder what switching some other stuff might do. And it got me to really thinking, and I'm a research nerd. Y'all don't even know. My husband would go to sleep and I'd be up just researching every little thing. I was researching ingredients and stuff. I was researching all of the products I use. And then it was like my eyes were open to the problem, which was everything on my shelf that I was putting on my kids, everything I was breathing, everything I was eating was toxic. No wonder we were sick all the time. And then the light bulb started going off and it was like, ding, 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 this is it. You've cracked the code, Jill. Elderberry syrup is where it began. I started telling my people on Facebook about it because it literally was changing our lives. I was in shock and people started wanting to buy it from me. So when I would make it, I'd always have extra jars. I put it in some mason jars and I stuck a price tag on it and started selling it. I can remember going around and visiting kids that I worked with, and their parents would always want elderberry syrup, so I would just carry my ice chest as a speech therapist with me into each session, and they would get their elderberry syrup while I was there visiting. Daycares would order it. People all over my community were ordering it. I did not realize that my community was so hungry for change. My community was sick and they were hurting and they needed help, just like my family did. I had no idea that that was the case, but it was, and my community rallied around what I was doing, and it was an amazing thing to see. It went from me just making local deliveries to the demand got so high that I would have to do pickup times at my home. And so after work, my husband and I would come home and we would put on these huge pots of elderberry syrup and we would just have a dance party in the kitchen while we made it. And I would schedule pickup times for all of my locals. So they would just be lined up in my driveway and I would run their jar out to them and they'd have their $20 bill out the window. I said, I can only imagine what my neighbors think I'm doing. They probably think I'm selling drugs or something. And so we got a good laugh out of that. From there, there was just no way I could meet the needs, so we decided to have porch pickups. So I put a lockbox, I nailed it to the outside of my front door. And so I nailed the lockbox so people could put their payments in there and it would lock and nobody would steal the payment. I had a Ring camera where I could watch people, make sure they weren't, jacking with my stuff. And so people could come at all times of the day and pick up their elderberry syrup. I had a cooler and I would just stick them in there and people would come by and stock up. Total just trust system. Okay, this is small town life, guys. Okay, so that was kind of how it developed, and then from there I was kind of like, whoa, this is demand. By then I had a friend tell me about her hair spritz and what that does for her hair, so I was making that. And of course, anytime I started making something for myself, I was like, I'm sure they're gonna want to know about this. I mean, it's amazing. I just was quickly discovering how amazing God's plants are and the ingredients he put out there for us to use, just how amazing it was. And I was so pumped about it. I was telling everyone about it. So it was hair spritz, and then it was lash serum because I wanted my lashes to grow. And when I went to look up how toxic the lash serums on the market were, I was like, I'm gonna make my own. I would find a recipe by then I was following all of these crunchy people and learning for myself what different ingredients do, and I was just like a sponge and I was just soaking it up. And so then I learned what we could do for healthy lashes, and I made my own lash serum, and by then people were just making orders and I just kind of had this thing going on the side. Let me insert to say, all this time, my sister, who lives in the Dallas, Texas area, her and her husband, actually he's the famous one, okay? His name's Mike Gazzardo. He actually traveled all over the nation and spoke at youth conferences. Amazing guy. He is my sister's husband, and he runs our business affairs. And He also worked for a really large church in the Dallas area called Gateway. My sister was a stay-at-home mom, and she had 4 kids she was raising, but my sister had a lot of health issues from our childhood and the way we were raised, and was already working with a naturopath, which is the same naturopath I use now. She was working through lots of health issues and finding victory there and freedom in her health through doing that, and was learning so much. So she was kind of my go-to through all of this. I still had so much to learn, but I would go off and run to my sister, and then Mike, he's a business genius, on top of being practically famous, he's written books, he's spoken all over the world. It's so funny now that he works behind the scenes and no one even knows who he is, but he was the famous one, and he used to travel, and everyone knew who Mike Gazzardo was. He was just he's always been so amazing, and so is my sister. My husband, I didn't mention, was my shipping department by the time we started shipping orders, okay? So we were all doing this together. But there was a time where Mike was in between church jobs, and he was praying about, what is it, God, that you have for me? And I remember visiting them in Dallas going, y'all could help me sell elderberry syrup. I mean, I could use some help. Maybe some Dallas people might want some elderberry. And I would always just kind of, and they were like, well, they would say, now how many jars are you selling? They were really kind of like, you're doing what? And I'm like, yeah, this is really like going crazy. Like, I'm about to drown. Y'all want to come in and help me? So anyway, after praying about it, they caught the dream and they saw what the Lord was doing, and they both decided to jump in with us, my husband and I. And so my brother-in-law, Mike, made me an offer to gradually become partners and co-owners with Rokasa Organics. And I said, yes, do it. I'm drowning. These people need all the remedies, and I was coming out with products left and right, and then I would just be having all these orders, and I didn't even know what I was getting myself into, but it was a lot. So they came in, and it has been a dream team from day one. So he takes care of the business affairs. That's not something I'm good at, the money and all that. Like, just put me in front of a camera and I can gab, clearly. But he took over the business side of things. My sister jumped in and started helping me educate and teaching me too about all of the things she had learned in the health world and from her doctor. And it was just, we have just run with it ever since. So in 2019 is when Mike and Alicia joined me and my husband Kevin as co-owners, and we actually started forming a website. We were so excited. In 2019, we formed an LLC, so we became an actual business, and then from there, we got a website made. And we can remember when the orders were coming in, and we would get so excited. We would text each other and be like, there would be like 10 orders a day that would come in, and we would be like, this is so cool. And I remember my brother-in-law saying, just think, one day it'll be nonstop. Our phones will go off nonstop with orders, and there'll be hundreds of orders that come in. And that just felt like so far away. That was 2019, guys. 4 years ago. And here we are. We all have our phones silenced because the orders roll in so quickly all day, every day. What a blessing from God. Anyway, we started out, obviously it was in my home. It went from there, it went to my mom, and my aunt would make the elderberry syrup in their kitchen. I had to get that out of my kitchen so I could do all my other products that I was making at the time. And then from there, we found us our first little commercial kitchen that we shared with a ministry in my hometown, which is about 20 minutes from where I live. And we operated out of there, and it's just the cutest little story. And then from the little commercial kitchen there, we ended up and got us our own facility in a business center here in my hometown. And well, not in my hometown, outside of my hometown, kind of in between my grow-up town and where I live now. And so we have a facility there, and we keep kind of expanding, and we just recently bought an entire campus, and we will be in the middle of remodeling it this year. And it's 5 super large buildings all connected for all of our different departments, and we ship all over the world, and that is where we're at. So that's how fast this thing has grown. But let me just talk a little bit about this. In 2020, I don't know, I didn't even tell y'all who I am, but I'm sure by now you have figured out that I'm Jill Rowe, owner of Rokasa Organics. I should have said that in the beginning. Oops. I forget, there's probably, if I'm talking to newcomers, you probably don't even know who I am. So anyway, that's who I am. So co-owner and founder of Rokasa Organics, okay? But anyway, in 2020, as we're rocking and rolling, had our website put up, business is exploding. In 2019, in 2020, I got pregnant and was super excited. My husband and I had wanted a baby together, and we finally got to do that. We're a blended family, and anyway, so we were super excited, but on into my journey about, I don't know, it was about 6 or 7 months in, I found out I had breast cancer while I was pregnant, while I'm running a health business and it's exploding. Okay, that was wild. So I won't go into my cancer journey. If you do want to hear the whole story, it's in Facebook. There's a saying that says, you may think it's happening to you, but it's happening for you. That's what this cancer diagnosis brought to me. I didn't love going through that. Obviously, it was really hard. It was devastating, but God saw me through it. And he told me, he said, Jill, if you're gonna run a health company and you're gonna lead all these people all over the world, then I've got some things to teach you, and this is how you're gonna learn. And there's nothing like hearing the word cancer to get you on the fast track to learning. So praise God, cancer-free. I had the earliest stage breast cancer that you could possibly have. God brought me through that, and I was able to learn so much from so many holistic practitioners, so much of what whole body health truly means. And it was that moment in 2020 that took me to the next level, in my opinion, as a leader. I got very serious. I thought that life was only about switching your products, which is what I was doing. But I didn't realize I also probably needed to quit drinking Dr. Pepper and eating Pop-Tarts every day. Now, I always say Dr. Pepper and Pop-Tarts, but y'all, there's so much more to health than just switching your products. And so here at Rokasa, that brings me to our mission and what we're about. Here at Rokasa, we are here to teach you about whole body health. We want you to switch your products. We want you to lessen your toxic load on your body. That is a huge part of what we do, but we also teach you about spiritual health. We also teach you about mental health, dealing with trauma, emotional health, forgiveness. We also teach you about how important sleep is and stress management and your diet, for goodness sake. What are you eating? How much water are you drinking? You were always talking about all the things, whole body health. I don't know that I would have ever gotten there because I was so healthy before getting cancer, just switching out my products. But I got on the fast track to learning. I realized there's so much more than just switching out your products, and that's what we're here for. That's what Rokasa is here for. We don't always post things that will make us sell. Our heart is to help you. I don't ever want you to hear the word cancer. If I can help teach you about whole body health, then that's worth it to me. Whether I make a dime off of that or not, I want to help people. God has called us to help people, to show you that there is a better way. There is a better way. Does that mean we hate doctors over here? Absolutely not. Does that mean that there's not a place for modern medicine? No, that does not mean that's what we preach. What we preach is that it is our responsibility to take control of our health. We are here to empower you to do just that. So, that is the Rokasa story. That is why we exist. God has done this. We are so thankful to be a part of this journey with you. We are still growing and learning on the daily. We've been able to connect with some amazing people, some, like I said, organic chemists, naturopath doctors, cancer specialists. There's so many people that God has led us to on our journeys, and we've been able to connect with and learn about health and share those things with you. We are very committed to doing research, to making sure that we give you the healthiest, cleanest, most effective product on the market. That is our story. Thank you for listening. I think I pretty much covered it all. Would love to hear if you have any questions or comments about the story and how all of this goes. We love talking about what God has done. He gets all the glory for all of it. That's just the way it is. Thank you for listening to our story. I look forward to doing 2023 with you guys.